Welcome back to Building Foundations, the podcast by DGI Waterproofing. Glad to have you back with us after our deep dive into those sump pump problems. I bet you're all sump pump pros by now. But we're not done yet. We're talking all things waterproofing today, but with a bit of a twist.
Yeah, we're getting into winter waterproofing.
Okay, so why should our listeners be thinking about waterproofing when it's like freezing outside, there's snow on the ground, it's the middle of winter?
Well, a lot of people think that waterproofing is a spring or a summer job.
Right.
But honestly, winter is a great time to think about waterproofing because those fluctuating temperatures we get in the winter, they cause the snow and ice to melt and refreeze. And that puts a ton of pressure on your foundation.
Oh, okay.
It's like nature's stress test for your foundation.
Okay.
And any weaknesses you have in your foundation, like cracks or gaps, they're really going to be put to the test.
So you're saying it's not just about April showers bring May flowers.
Right.
It's winter that's kind of setting the stage for potential water damage.
Exactly. And that's why, we often recommend tackling waterproofing in the winter because it's like the perfect time to identify and fix those vulnerabilities before they become major problems in the spring.
So waiting until spring to waterproof is kind of like waiting until you have a flat tire to check your tire pressure.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You're right. It's all about preventative maintenance.
Right.
And especially when it comes to your home. I mean, this is a big investment. You really want to protect it.
Yeah, of course. But, some of our listeners might be thinking, wait a minute, can you even waterproof in the winter? Isn't that a spring or a summer job?
That's a really common misconception. You absolutely can waterproof basements in the winter.
Okay. So tell me, what are the advantages?
Well, for starters, think about scheduling. Spring and summer, those are our busy seasons.
Good bet, yeah.
Everyone's calling about waterproofing once the weather warms up.
Makes sense, yeah.
But in the winter, things are a little bit slower, so we can usually get to your home faster and, be more flexible with scheduling.
That's a big win for homeowners, right? Not having to wait weeks or even months for an appointment.
Exactly. And by waterproofing in the winter, you're getting ahead of that freeze-thaw cycle we talked about. You're really preventing damage before it even happens.
Yeah.
So it's not just about reacting to a problem, you're being proactive.
I like it.
And don't forget about all that snow that piles up over the winter.
Oh, yeah.
When it melts in the spring, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Right.
And if your home's not properly waterproofed, that water can end up in your basement.
Oh, nobody wants a swimming pool in their basement.
No. So, by waterproofing in the winter, you're making sure that your basement stays nice and dry, no matter what the weather's like outside.
So it's peace of mind.
It is. It really is. And there's another bonus, too. A dry basement is a big selling point. So if you ever decide to sell your house, that investment in waterproofing can really pay off.
Oh, that's a good point. So it's not just about protecting your home now. It's protecting its value in the future.
Exactly. And we can't forget about energy efficiency. A dry basement is a better insulated basement, which means lower heating bills.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. Lower heating bills is always a good thing.
Always a good thing. So you can see there's a lot of good reasons to waterproof in the winter.
I'm convinced. But let's be real. There's got to be some downsides, right?
Right.
What are some of the challenges that you guys face at DGI when you're waterproofing in the winter?
Well, the biggest one is just dealing with the frozen ground. It can be really difficult to excavate.
Right.
And we have to use special equipment, special techniques just to get the job done.
So it's not just grab your shovel and dig a trench?
No, not quite. And then you have to think about the materials because some waterproofing materials, they need specific temperatures to cure properly.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So we have to choose really carefully.
So it's like this delicate balancing act between getting the job done, but also making sure that the materials will work correctly in cold temperatures.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about the weather. Winter can be unpredictable, right? If we get a big snowstorm, that can really throw a wrench in our plans.
Oh, for sure. So some flexibility is important.
It is. And finally, just working in the cold takes a lot of prep, extra safety measures.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that our team is safe and warm and that they can do their best work, even when it's freezing outside.
So it sounds like winter waterproofing is possible, but there are definitely some unique challenges.
There are, but we've been doing this for a while, so you've got it figured out.
Awesome. So for our listeners out there, what are some of the essential winter waterproofing services that you guys recommend?
Well, it really depends on the homeowner's needs and their property, but I'd say one of the most important is interior waterproofing.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't involve any digging up frozen ground, it's a really good option for the winter.
Okay, interior waterproofing, what does that involve?
So that can include things like installing vapor barriers, sealing cracks in the walls and the floors, and then applying waterproof coatings.
Got it.
So it's basically creating a barrier against moisture from the inside out.
So even if there's water pushing against the foundation from the outside, it's not going to be able to get into the basement.
That's the idea. And another essential service is making sure your sump pump is in good working order.
Ah, yes. The sump pump. We did a whole deep dive on sump pumps, didn't we?
We did!
For good reason.
For good reason. A well-maintained sump pump is really your first line of defense against water intrusion, and especially when all that snow starts melting in the spring.
Right.
So you definitely want to have it installed and maintained before the big thaw hits.
All right, listeners, if you haven't already, go back and listen to episode 3, Sump Pump Mistakes to Avoid. It'll be worth it. So we've got interior waterproofing, sump pump maintenance. What else is on your winter waterproofing checklist?
Well, addressing any foundation cracks, that's crucial during the winter.
Right, because even the tiniest cracks can let in water.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how much water can get in through a tiny crack. So we use these professional-grade sealants that are really good at preventing melting snow and ice from seeping in through those cracks.
It's like plugging up all the holes before the water has a chance to find them.
Exactly. And we also recommend getting your drainage system checked and clean before the winter really hits.
The drainage system.
Yeah, so all those underground pipes, we want to make sure that the water is flowing away from your house, not towards it.
Okay, so it's not just about waterproofing the basement. It's about managing the water flow around the entire property.
Exactly. You got it.
That makes sense. And then one last thing, mold prevention.
Right. Moisture and mold, they go hand in hand. So winter is a good time to address any mold issues that you might already have and just create a healthier home environment.
Mold is definitely not something you want lurking in your basement.
No. It can be really tough to get rid of once it takes hold. So if you see any signs of mold, don't wait. Deal with it now.
Wow. So much good information already.
We've covered a lot of ground.
It feels like we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So let's recap for our listeners. What are the key takeaways here?
Winter waterproofing, it's not only possible, it's often the best time to do it. And it can really save you from a lot of headaches down the road.
Headaches and expenses.
That's right. And it's not as complicated as it might seem. There's a lot of different options available, and we're here to help. You know DGI Waterproofing is here to guide you every step of the way.
We're your waterproofing allies, here to help you build a strong and dry foundation for your home.
Speaking of foundations, you know that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure?
Ooh, yes. What a good one. How does that apply to winter waterproofing?
I think it's just a good reminder that if you take proactive steps now, you can really prevent major problems later on.
Right.
So instead of waiting for water damage to happen, why not prevent it altogether?
I love it. That makes perfect sense.
Think of it this way. Your home is an investment, and waterproofing is one of the best ways to protect that investment.
Absolutely.
So by taking care of your home now, you're ensuring its value and its longevity for years to come.
Wise words. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
We have. But before we move on, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. Thinking about your own home, what area might be most vulnerable to water damage this spring?
Ooh, good question.
Could be a crack in the foundation, a leaky window. Well, maybe your gutters aren't draining properly. Whatever it is, that's the area you want to focus on.
Okay, so figure out the weak spot and take action before the spring thaw hits.
Exactly. And if you need any help identifying those weak spots or deciding what to do, just reach out to us, DGI Waterproofing.
We're always happy to help. Visit our website or give us a call for a free consultation.
We're passionate about this. We want to help homeowners protect their most valuable asset.
Yeah, if you're ready to learn how to keep those basements dry no matter what time of year it is, you are in the right place.
We've said it before, but we've seen so many times at DGI that waiting until spring to address water issues can be a really costly mistake.
It's like ignoring that check engine light until your car breaks down on the highway.
Yeah, exactly. Preventative maintenance is key, especially with waterproofing.
So let's dig into some of the details here. We talked about interior waterproofing in the last part being a good option for the colder months. What does that look like? What does that involve?
Well, it's all about creating that barrier from the inside out to keep moisture from ever reaching your living spaces.
All right, walk me through it. What are the techniques you use for interior waterproofing?
So one really important step is installing a vapor barrier.
A vapor barrier, is that like a force field against water?
It's not quite science fiction, but it is pretty effective. It's basically a thick plastic sheet that we install along the basement walls and floors, like a giant plastic wrap for your basement.
Oh, okay.
Keeps moisture from seeping through.
So you're creating that waterproof cocoon on the inside.
Exactly. And then, we got to talk about those cracks, those pesky cracks. So we address those from the inside by using special sealants. They're designed specifically to fill and seal cracks in concrete.
You know how much water can actually get in through a little crack? It seems like a small problem.
No, you'd be surprised. Even a tiny crack can let in a ton of water. That's why it's so important to seal them up properly. And that's where DGI comes in. Our team has the experience to know exactly which sealant to use for each situation.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
No, not at all. We really consider the type of crack, the severity of the problem, and the conditions to make sure we're using the right solution.
Got it.
Now, in addition to the vapor barriers and crack sealing, we also use waterproof coatings on the basement walls.
Waterproof coatings, what are those? Are they like a special kind of paint?
Yeah, you could think of it like that. They're applied like a coating, like paint, but they're a lot thicker, and they're more robust, and they create this seamless waterproof membrane that prevents water from getting into the concrete.
So it's like giving your basement a waterproof raincoat.
Exactly. And because all of this is done from the inside, you don't have to dig anything up. You don't have to worry about frozen ground.
That's a big plus in the winter.
It is. Interior waterproofing just gives you a lot more flexibility, especially when it's cold outside.
It seems like you guys really have this whole waterproofing thing down to a science.
Yeah, we try our best.
But is interior waterproofing always the answer? Are there times when you need to tackle the problem from the outside, even in the winter?
You're right. Interior waterproofing isn't always the solution. Sometimes the problem is on the outside of the house.
So what happens then?
Well, we can handle exterior waterproofing even when it's cold outside. It's definitely more challenging, but it's doable.
Oh, okay. How do you manage to excavate and waterproof when everything's frozen solid?
Well, we have special equipment that lets us dig even when the ground is frozen. And for waterproofing, we usually install a waterproof membrane along the exterior of the foundation walls.
So you're wrapping the entire foundation in waterproofing.
Exactly. And we install proper drainage systems, like French drains, to redirect water away from the foundation.
Yeah, we talked about those French drains earlier. They're like little underground rivers that carry the water away from the house, right?
Right. They're really important for preventing water from pooling up around your foundation.
So it's a more comprehensive approach. You're not just focusing on the basement, but managing water flow around the whole property.
That's the idea. And when we're doing exterior waterproofing, another thing we have to consider is the grading.
The grading.
The slope of the ground around the house. We want to make sure it slopes away from the foundation so the water runs off and doesn't pool up near the house.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't want water hanging out around the foundation, just waiting to find a way in.
Exactly. We want to encourage it to move along.
So you're not just waterproofing, you're landscaping with water management in mind.
That's a great way to put it. It's about working with water, understanding how it behaves and making sure it doesn't cause any problems.
It sounds like whether it's interior or exterior, you guys have all the tools and techniques to get the job done.
We do. And we stay up to date on all the latest advancements in waterproofing, so we can provide the best possible service.
That's reassuring to hear. But I'm sure with so many options, it can be tough for a homeowner to know where to start.
That's true. It can be overwhelming. That's why we offer free consultations to help homeowners figure out what they need. We take the guesswork out of waterproofing.
I love that.
And speaking of experts, there's one more thing I want to talk about.
I think I know where you're going with this. The sump pump.
You got it. Sump pumps, they're just so important for keeping basements dry, especially during the winter when you have all that snow melting.
Right. And listeners, if you need a refresher on sump pumps, go back and listen to the last episode, Sump Pump Mistakes to Avoid.
Exactly. But I want to emphasize that it's not enough to just have a sump pump. You need to make sure it's properly installed, maintained, and ready to handle whatever comes its way.
So it's not just about having one, it's about having one that works properly.
That's right. So that might mean having it serviced, making sure the discharge pipe is clear. You might even want to think about a backup power source in case the power goes out.
Yeah, you don't want to be caught off guard during a big storm.
No, you don't. And the installation is just as important as the pump itself. So it's really important to choose a good contractor, someone who knows what they're doing.
And I think our listeners know where to find a good contractor. We're wrapping up our winter waterproofing deep dive, and I got to say, I'm feeling a lot more confident about facing those winter storms now.
Yeah, me too. I think we've given our listeners a really good overview of how to protect their homes from water damage during the winter.
Yeah, we talked about being proactive,
Good.
right? Tackling those vulnerabilities before they become big problems. But before we wrap things up completely, there are a couple more topics we need to cover.
Right. We talked about mold prevention earlier, but let's dive a little deeper into that.
Okay, let's talk mold. Mold is like every homeowner's worst nightmare, right?
It is.
I mean, it's unsightly. It can be a health hazard.
It can. And here at DGI, we know that mold loves those damp, dark spaces. And a basement that has moisture problems, that can be a breeding ground for mold.
So how do we prevent mold from taking over our basement? Is it just a matter of keeping things clean and dry?
Well, that's a good start, but there's more to it than that. I mean, the first line of defense is waterproofing.
Right.
If you can prevent water from getting into your basement in the first place, you're basically eliminating the main ingredient that mold needs to grow.
So all those techniques that we talked about in the previous parts, the vapor barriers, sealants, the coatings, drainage systems, all of that is helping to prevent mold as well.
Exactly. But there's some additional steps homeowners can take to really create a mold-resistant environment.
Okay, I want to hear these. What are they?
Well, ventilation's key. You want to make sure your basement has good airflow so you don't get that stagnant, damp air that mold just loves.
So just opening a window every now and then can help.
It can. Even in the winter, a little bit of fresh air can really make a difference. And if you can't open the windows, you might consider installing some exhaust fans just to keep the air moving.
Okay. What about dehumidifiers? Do those help prevent mold?
Yeah, they can. Dehumidifiers are great for controlling humidity levels. So if your basement tends to be damp, a dehumidifier can really help to pull that excess moisture out of the air.
So they're like little mold fighting machines.
You could say that. But it's important to remember that sometimes mold is a symptom of a bigger problem.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're seeing mold, it could be a sign that you have a leaky pipe, maybe a crack in the foundation, or something else that's letting moisture into your house.
Oh, so mold is like a little red flag telling you to investigate further.
Exactly. Don't just ignore it. Try to figure out what's causing it and fix that problem. And of course, if you're dealing with a really bad mold problem, a big infestation, it's always best to call in the pros.
And that's where you guys come in.
We do. We've got specialized mold remediation services to take care of that.
Awesome. Let's move on to another topic we touched on earlier, the drainage systems.
Yeah, those French drains, those underground heroes.
We talked about how they work, but why are they so important in the winter?
Well, just think about all that snow and ice that builds up over the winter. When it starts to melt, that's a lot of water.
And if it doesn't have a clear path away from your house, it's going to find its way in.
That's where the French drains come in. They redirect that water away from your foundation so it doesn't pool up and cause damage.
So they're essential for keeping those basements dry, especially during the spring thaw.
Exactly. And that's why we always recommend having your drainage system checked and cleaned before the winter really kicks in.
Oh, so important. A little preventative maintenance goes a long way. It's all coming together now.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. We just want to make sure our listeners have all the information they need to protect their homes.
So listeners, I think we've really covered all the essential stuff about winter waterproofing, the why, the how, who to call if you need help.
We've really emphasized the importance of being proactive. Don't wait for water damage to happen.
Couldn't agree more.
Take steps now to protect your home.
So this is our final call to action. Winter is the time to do it, listeners. Tackle those waterproofing projects now before you get caught off guard.
If you have any questions or you need help creating a plan for your home, give us a call at DGI Waterproofing.
We're always here to help. We want you to have a strong, dry, and healthy foundation all year round.
And remember, a dry basement is a happy basement.
Thanks for joining us on Building Foundations. We'll see you next time.